Yeah, in some cases, generally though, what you want to do when you look at a lot of these contracts is you really want to not just look at it from the standpoint of that individual contract, but also what is the overall approach of the department towards job creation and job retraining. You could look at the individual contracts, but I really think what we need really is an overall vision for how the city of Detroit is going to deal with its workforce, how it's going to train its workforce, those people that may either be undertrained or maybe in some cases need to be retrained because the industry that they used to work in has just collapsed completely. So you got to look at it from that standpoint. We need an overall vision, and I don't know that we've seen one recently from the current administration for how we approach these workforce issues. Yeah, well, it's really almost a two-part question. I'll take the second part first on the recycling. Yes, absolutely, I do. And the pilot project actually was launched under my tenure as mayor, although it really came from city council. It's really pushed heavily by Joanne Watson. So that's really her baby. But we did take it when I was mayor, and we actually made it happen from a pilot project standpoint. So we got a pilot project that's taking place now involving recycling of 30,000 Detroit homes, 15,000 on the west side, and another 15,000 on the east side. And all the feedback I'm getting is very, very positive. I think what we're probably going to have to do though, and this is something at the last green meeting of my green task force we talked about, is I think we need to probably look at extending the term of the pilot project at least to maybe 2 years, or if not 2 years, and maybe 18 months, so that we have a little bit more time to get the word out about the fact that the pilot program is in place, and also so that we have a little more, for want of a better term, data that we can look at, so that we can see what's working well, what's working okay but could maybe be improved, what's working not so good that also needs to be improved, and what we probably just need to totally start from scratch on. So I do support it, especially from the standpoint of maybe looking towards going to a full citywide recycling program at some point. As far as the incinerator is concerned, I would like to see the incinerator shut down. The only issue is that the deal that we got locked into, and this is no disrespect to the Honorable Coleman Young, former mayor, but it is so complicated and there's so many moving parts to it, and on a certain level it puts the city at such a disadvantaged position. And again, I'm not knocking him, nor do I fault him, because at the time he was dealing with some significant economic challenges and problems in the budget at that time, and I think he saw this legitimately as a way to help the city of Detroit. But it's just such a complicated deal that getting out of it and being able to do it like that is not necessarily going to be an easy feat. But ultimately, yeah, my preference would be to see the thing going. Who's saying if they think it's a possible revenue?
I'm just saying.
For the city or for themselves? I hadn't seen a plan. I mean, if somebody wanted to put together a plan that showed how the incinerator could be a revenue generator for the city, I'd have to say, yeah, I'd be open-minded and I'd take a look at it. No one's put anything in front of me yet. Well, I mean, I think the big one that everybody talks about when they think about the Charter Commission is City Council going to districts. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about that. And that is important. I do support districts, although I think that before the Charter Commission goes that route, they need to take a look at a couple of issues. I think the one big issue that I would say they got to take a look at is the powers of City Council. Because the number one reason why I hear a lot of people saying the council ought to be elected from districts is they say, because we'll get better city services. There's a big problem with that argument. Council is not responsible for city service delivery. Council is actually the lawmaking branch. So if you got a crack house on your block, for example, technically a council member does not have the authority to order the police department to go and raid that crack house. Or if the street lights on your block have been out for 6 months. A council member does not have the authority to order public lighting. I want these lights fixed and I want them done by the end of the day. All the city departments under the charter currently operate under the ultimate authority of the mayor. And really, with maybe just like one exception, which is the head of the law department, the mayor can handpick whoever he wants to run these departments, and they ultimately answer to him. They don't answer to city council. So I think if council's going to, if the Charter Commission is going to look at electing council by districts, then one thing they're going to have to take a look at is the idea of maybe giving council a certain amount of power over how the resources are allocated and distributed in those districts, to maybe give council a certain amount of power over departments within their district so that some of these things can be taken care of. Because otherwise, all you really do just by putting council members in districts is you let people know who they can complain to, but you haven't necessarily given those council members any additional power or juice to get those complaints dealt with. You know, some of the other stuff I think is going to have to be looked at, especially in the wake of some things that happened recently in the city, is the provisions governing forfeiture and how that works. If you have an elected official in city government who's found to have abused his or her power, even just flat out broken the law. You know, we went through that before, and a lot of that, there were a lot of problems and inconsistencies in the charter language that made it difficult to deal with some of the problems that have occurred recently. So I think that language has got to be beefed up too. I don't regret my vote at all because I voted for that ordinance. I supported it. So yeah, absolutely. I don't regret my vote because I supported the predatory lending ordinance, and it's unfortunate that the state legislature, although we kind of knew they were going to do it because they were frankly very frightened of that ordinance. So they decided to preempt it after we passed our ordinance. Mayor at that time vetoed it, but that really wasn't the death knell because frankly I think we probably would have had the votes to override that veto anyway. But the thing that really did it in is that the state legislature passed its own law governing predatory lending in the state of Michigan, and that more or less killed our ordinance because the thing is state law supersedes local law. That's, for example, is the reason why we don't have a residency requirement anymore because the state legislature eliminated it. So no, I supported that ordinance, and frankly I wish we still had it or would have had the opportunity to actually put it into practice. I do, you know, I mean, I'll be honest. First off, I understand where a lot of folks were coming from in terms of their opposition and their fear. I understand that. I understand it completely. I understand that fear and I understand that concern. And I respect it too. You know, I respect those opinions. I understand where they're coming from because those opinions and a lot of those concerns and a lot of that fear, frankly, was grounded in history in terms of some things that have been done and some moves that have been made against the city and against our people. And I said all along, I didn't think it was a great deal. It was the best deal that we could put together at that time, given the circumstances that we were under. We were at risk of losing something that brings to the city of Detroit $300 million a year in revenue. That's just the auto show alone. And then when you add to us the fact that we have continued to see Cobo fall notch after notch after notch on the list of convention centers that are considered state-of-the-art and where people want to go. And to me, to have just allowed that to continue to happen and see a lot of business going to Chicago or to Orlando, Florida, or to other parts of the country and us not get the benefit of that revenue, I didn't want to see the city of Detroit be put in that situation. Now, I do think at the end of the day, the deal that we have now is still a good deal. In fact, in some respects, it's a better deal because there's some improvements over it. But I also still think that the Cobo thing was the right thing to do. The reality is if we had the money to fix up Cobo all on our own, that would have been a no-brainer and there would have been no discussion. We'd have put the money into fixing it up and we'd have done it all on our own. We don't have the money. The cost of doing the expansion of Cobo, frankly, is almost the size of the city's deficit. So we got to be realistic about that. There would have been no way that the city could finance an expansion and improvement to Cobo on its own. So a regional partnership made sense. It still makes sense. It's happening now. And I think at the end of the day, it's not like some giant's going to come in here and walk off with Cobo and take it to Oakland County. It's here, and we have somebody on that board who has full veto power over anything that that board does. An African American who lives in the city of Detroit, that if he determines that there will not be, or that there's not sufficient jobs going to Detroiters in a proposal, if he determines, for example, that any plan to expand it, whether it's architectural renderings or whether it's design stuff or actual construction, that person who's looking out for the city's interests says, no, I don't like this, I don't see enough Detroit representation in this, he can kill the deal with just his vote. That's a good deal to me. And I think the bottom line is it's going to produce an expanded Cobo Hall, which will be creating jobs for Detroiters.